Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for joining the session on space science. My name is Dr. Gail Isles, and I'll be sharing with you one or two things related to the brand new space science degree at RMIT University. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and the Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations. The Kulin Nations are located around the Melbourne area. So for those of us who are living in metropolitan Melbourne, then we will be engaged in those ancient areas and meet the ancestors and elders and speakers of the Woiwurrung and the Boonwurrung languages. And I feel particularly privileged to be able to work alongside elders at RMIT University from the Boonwurrung language groups. Next slide, please. As a symbol of reconciliation between the later settlers and the original inhabitants of Australia, RMIT has built a very beautiful tribute. It's a huge bronze statue that's on New Academic Street in the outside on Bowen Street at RMIT, and it's one of the possum shawls that the original people of Australia would wear. And I think this is a beautiful meeting spot at RMIT, and if and when you enroll at the university, then you'll be able to meet at this location and learn a little bit more about how RMIT is dedicated to reconciliation and involving everyone in those actions. Next slide, please. So, the Bachelor of Space Science. Well, the Indigenous people of this country know an awful lot about space science. They have been tracking the movement of the bodies in the heavens for well over 45,000 years. So we can certainly learn a lot from the elders that we have access to. But you can also learn some things from myself and an incredible team of space scientists at RMIT University. So whether your interests are in human spaceflight, how it is that we get to Mars, then through a unique mix of physics and maths and geospatial science and loads of other subjects, you will learn everything you want to know and hopefully answer all of your burning questions. And by the end of the degree, you will participate in a placement of some description, and you'll be gaining knowledge in not just satellite operations, not just human spaceflight, but you'll also get hands-on experience designing, building your own experiments. You'll be able to launch them on rockets, possibly even parabolic flights, and there are plans to send our experiments to the International Space Station. Next slide, please. The entry requirements onto the Bachelor of Space Science have a current ATAR of around 75. You'll need your English and some maths, and in particular we need math methods and specialist maths. Now, if you're not a year 12 leaver, then we do also have alternate pathways for mature students or those who have studied through TAFE, and we can provide those additional pathways to you should you need them. Next slide, please. As I hinted at earlier, we have designed this degree so that it combines the best of the best. We have scanned all of the subjects that we offer at RMIT and picked those that would be best suited to the space science world that we're in these days, and in particular, space science as it is in Australia. The last thing we want to do is have you study this degree and then leave Australia. That's not what this degree is about. We are about keeping the talent in this country and developing the space industry right here. So of course you're going to study subjects, you know, basic physics subjects, so electromagnetism and mechanics. In third year, we'll treat you to a little bit of astrophysics, a taste of what that involves. You'll also do the necessary engineering to learn about systems design and space flight design. You'll also benefit from the experts that we have at RMIT in geospatial science. That's not just remote sensing or imaging the Earth from space, but also how to process huge amounts of data, how to analyze images, and a whole heap of other topics. And then finally, we have created 4 brand new 100% dedicated space courses just for this degree to really pep up the content and make it very current. And this is where we bring in all our industry partners. So we have space exploration, we have satellites and space debris, we have rocket science, and we also have microgravity science. These are very unique courses, not just to this degree, but to all universities across Australia. So this is truly a unique offering. Next slide, please. The way that all of these courses are integrated across the 3 years is to give you a flavour of all of the subjects across all semesters and across all years. So for example, if you join in the standard entry route, you would be doing in semester 1 of year 1 some physics, some maths, a bit of programming and a bit of engineering. And that combination continues. In semester 2 of year 1, you'd be doing the first space courses, a bit more maths and a bit more physics. And so it goes on, and we rotate around the physics, geospatial, engineering and space courses as you go through the different semesters. The 4 new space courses are spread throughout the degree. So you'll do space exploration and satellites and space debris in first year. In second year, you'll do the rocket science, which includes some orbital mechanics, but also a very fun practical activity where you'll build and launch your own rocket. And then in third year, the microgravity science is where you'll design and build an experiment that could either go into space or on the space station in a parabolic flight or on one of the rockets that you've actually built. Next slide, please. In order to facilitate all of this teaching, we have some wonderful rooms and spaces at RMIT. What you can see in the image here is our virtual experiences laboratory. This has a huge video wall, and the video wall can be configured to different scenarios. You can see here some staff and students from RMIT participating in a space situational awareness activity with our industry partners. And you can see that the screens have various windows open. The screens on the left are showing some space weather, and the screens on the right are showing a mission management board. And this can be reconfigured for a space weather prediction laboratory, for example, or a mission control room activity. And we will use this room a lot, and you as students will participate in activities in this room. So that's kind of RMIT mission control. There's then various laboratories connected to the academics. So you can come to my space physics lab, you can go to the telescope that Brett operates. There's also a radiation lab. We have the rocket building lab. We have some intelligent systems laboratories. There's the advanced manufacturing precinct and the Space Research Centre and the Sir Lawrence Wackett Centre. So there are lots of places where our staff work, offering research projects, and that spills over into your undergraduate experiences all the time. You will have access to those perhaps in the second and third years as you come to do more independent and individual projects. Next slide, please. So through our world-leading staff, they have connections with a whole wealth of industry partners. That's through the work that we've done in our past, or the work that we're currently doing, or funding opportunities and research projects. And those partners are world leaders themselves. So we have direct contact with staff from not just ESA and NASA, as I'm wearing here, but also smaller, more independent companies like Space Application Services, the up-and-coming companies in Australia like Equatorial Launch Australia and the Australian Space Agency, and then a number of academic institutions worldwide that are also highly active in space. So our key partners there are Kyushu University in Japan, Texas A&M University, and many other universities as well. Next slide, please. So on top of those industry connections that we have through the staff that will teach you on the degree, we also have dedicated industry partners who are invested in the degree and will work directly with you on the degree. So for example, the Bureau of Meteorology is involved very heavily with our space weather prediction laboratory, and you will work alongside those staff just by virtue of participating in the exercise. Same goes for Sabre Astronautics. We offer these space situational awareness exercises 3 times per year, and they are managed by Sabre. If you've not heard of Sabre Astronautics, they were awarded the contract to build the Mission Control Centre in Adelaide for the Australian Space Agency. Similarly, with the other companies, they are all involved, whether that's through giving a guest lecture in one of your courses or simply by offering projects and internships, then you will have involvement with, you know, not just ESA and NASA, but with real Australian companies, and you will get a true flavour of the types of jobs and the types of roles that are available in Australia for you, not just as a graduate of space science, but also as an intern and as a work experience student. Next slide, please. Here's a couple of examples of the kinds of projects you could work on. So the company Nova Systems has a subsidiary called Geoplex, and they distribute a space tracking software called STK. It just so happens that their office in Melbourne is in Hardware Lane. So once things start to open up again, then there is an opportunity there for you to physically go to those offices and start tracking tracking satellites using this industry standard software. Same goes for the Bureau of Meteorology. So as well as predicting Earth weather, they also predict space weather, and those space weather offices are in Sydney. And again, there's a chance that you could work alongside those people remotely and ultimately become trained yourself as a meteorologist and end up working in Sydney one day. Next slide, please. So I've been talking about these work experience opportunities and these connections with industry. So as well as guest lectures popping up here and there, and as well as kind of getting your hands on industry level software through your courses, once you get into third year, that's when the industry participation really starts to hot up. So there are 3 courses that you could participate in. There's a course called Professional Scientist, where you'll plan and organise a mission within a team. There's then work experience available if you've managed to organise an internship with an external company. And there's also Science Project, which is a hybrid of the two. And in all cases, you'll not only be working with an RMIT academic who's an expert in space themselves, but you'll also have a connection to an industry partner. So third year is where things get really exciting. Next slide, please. A couple more examples of projects. So as well as the Nova Systems GeoPlex software, there's an alternative software. It's called Piggy, and that's the image on the bottom right there. That's another satellite tracking software with another industry partner. So if there's no places left at GeoPlex, you can always go and work with Sabre. There's the space weather activity I've mentioned already. And then also in Melbourne, we have the Commonwealth Science Organisation, CSIRO, and their manufacturing branch is over in Hawthorne, and they, or Clayton, and they have some excellent manufacturing facilities, and we're launching a new project with them to look at the deployment of mechanisms on spacecraft using shape memory alloys. So that is, although that's a research project, there's scope for you to join those as an undergraduate as well. Next slide, please. So in addition to the space connections that we have across the world and the connections of the individual academics related to the space science degree, RMIT as an entity, as a university, has connections with over 200 universities worldwide. And this translates into global opportunities for you as students. And we even have campuses in other countries. So we don't just have campus in Australia, we have campuses in multiple places in Asia, and we even have a European campus now in Spain. Next slide, please. If the content of the space science degree is not enough for you and you just need more space and get your hands on even more things, then there are voluntary student groups that you can join through the student union, and one of those is the rocket team. So the RMIT rocket team entered the 2019 Australian Universities rocket competition and won the 30,000 foot category. And the team is still going and still building rockets. And as a space scientist, you would be responsible for building the experiment that goes on the rocket, because although the rocket only goes to 30,000 feet, you certainly don't need to go into space to experience free fall or zero G. So we have experiments on there that make use of that microgravity condition, and we can investigate all kinds of wonderful and weird phenomena during 20 to 30 seconds of zero G. So the picture on the right is showing you the payload that we actually flew on a 3-meter long rocket, and that was the award-winning rocket. There's a student standing proudly behind it. The second activity that we participate in regularly is the NASA RASCAL Design Challenge. Every year, NASA releases a handful of key areas that it wants to research and that it's interested in learning more about, and it actually opens it up to university teams. Now, American universities are the only ones allowed to enter, but what we have done in the past, RMIT has joined those American university teams and formed a conglomerate, and this is a great way for RMIT students to get involved in this very exciting design challenge. It lasts for about 9 months, and again, once you get more advanced through your studies, so between second and third year, you can participate in this with a corresponding American university. And then thirdly, we have the rover team. Once again, this is mainly participated in by engineering students. The engineering students build the rover and operate the rover, but as space scientists, the rover is irrelevant if it has no science on board. So you again would be joining a team to develop the scientific instrument suite that will go on board that rover. And that could range from looking for water in the outback to scanning the ground with a ground penetrating radar antenna to see if there's any good caves underground that we could potentially live in. And if you translate all of that to the moon, then it becomes very relevant to space science. Next slide, please. So the big question is, well, what am I going to do with this fancy new space science degree once I graduate? Well, like I said, we certainly don't want you to leave Australia. We want you to stay here. We want you to work inside the Australian space industry, which is rapidly growing and rapidly developing, and work alongside the Australian Space Agency as we develop our plan right here in Australia to expand the industry by 30,000 jobs over the next 10 years. So, with such a broad degree, with all this physics, maths, geospatial science, engineering and space courses, you're actually going to be very highly qualified as a consultant. You could be somebody who talks between a satellite manufacturing company and perhaps a spacecraft testing facility, how to conduct the vibration and thermal tests, for example. If you just want to stick with tracking satellites, you could become a space surveillance specialist, or you could be a space debris tracking scientist. We've got 3 burgeoning rocket launch companies in Australia, so you could become a launch engineer for one of those companies. You could even become a sounding rocket scientist, so designing payloads, not the small ones as you saw the students building, but the large experiments that will go on sounding rockets. So a measurement rocket that will just go up, take some measurements and come back down again. Propulsion technician is going to be needed at one of the 3 rocket companies in Australia. And of course, I mentioned the new Mission Control Centre in Adelaide. Well, we need people to staff that Mission Control Centre. So if you have dreams of being a flight director one day, or being the person wearing the headphones and answering the call, you know, Adelaide, we have a problem, then you could be a flight controller or even a mission controller. Next slide, please. So this degree has been developed over a number of years by a team of experts within RMIT, and any one of us can answer your questions. We have experts in a number of areas. You have myself. I'm in the Department of Physics, and my expertise is in human spaceflight. We have Dr. Brett Carter, who is a space physicist who's an expert in solar physics and the ionosphere, and we have Professor So-Lin Choi, who is an expert in satellite tracking and all things space research. So if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat, and we can spend the next few moments going through those, and it will be our pleasure to answer them. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will do our best to answer all of your questions. So, Jackie, should I answer these questions verbally? Okay, well, let's have a look. How are we doing? All right, let's have a look. We have lots and lots and lots of questions. Oh, golly. Okay, so question here. Someone is interested in space science, but a bit worried about it being male dominated. Feeling a bit reassured by the presenter being female, but what's the field like? Okay, so the field of space is different from flying, for example. I think in aviation, the aviation numbers are around about 5% female, 95% male, but space is actually very different. Space it's more like the rest of science, so it's round about the 20% mark, 20% female, 80% male. But as you'll see when and if Brett puts his camera on, the men that we work with are very nice and certainly not intimidating at all. And you're just as likely to meet a scary, intimidating woman as you are to meet a scary, intimidating man in the field. So certainly don't let that put you off. All right. Let's go to some of the published questions. I'll start at the top. Let's see what's not been answered. What kind of roles would a graduate be qualified for? I hope the slide on the graduate roles reassured you a little there. Would you be able to call yourself a rocket scientist? Absolutely, you can call yourself a rocket scientist. Definitely, there's a course called rocket science. As long as you pass that one, then you can call yourself a rocket scientist. Because we make you do a bunch of calculations, and if you can do those calculations, then sure, you qualify. And in terms of graduate roles, a lot of the companies that I named actually have graduate programs. So for example, I keep using the example of the Bureau, but it's a great organization. The Bureau of Meteorology offer a 1-year graduate certificate. It's the same level as an honours degree. And you go and spend a year with them. So instead of doing honours at a normal university, you'd do your honours with the Bureau. And at the end of that, you'd be qualified to be a meteorologist. And if you wanted to, you could then go and specialise and do space weather. All right, what else do we have? How would someone who hasn't done math methods get into this course? Okay, so if you haven't done math methods, and I'm assuming you're older than 18 or whatever age you leave year 12, you could either go and do math methods at TAFE, you could enroll on a maths course at RMIT, and you could do an Open Universities maths course, and then there's the University of Adelaide and the University of Melbourne both do distance learning maths courses. So there's a whole bunch of alternate online studies that you can do to get the math, the equivalent of math methods. Okay. How much will be conducted online and how might this affect access to facilities? So, you know, we're restricted by the guidelines that the government sets for us. So if the government says that universities have to study online, then we have to follow those guidelines. If we weren't in a pandemic and if there were no stipulations by government, then everything would be in person. The course is basically taught, all the lectures are delivered on in person, and all of the practical activities take place in the facilities that we have. When we're in a stage 4 lockdown, then we have to convert it all online. So if you're looking to enroll for next year, then it's, I can't predict what the status would be, but at the moment we're offering a hybrid so that if we can get onto campus, we do. And if we're not allowed on campus, then we deliver things online. But under normal operating conditions, we definitely want to meet you and teach you as much as possible face to face. All right, 5 thumbs up for people who are interested in the practical and engineering side of space. like designing and building satellites and equipment. Would you recommend this course over an aerospace or mechanical engineering degree? Also, what sort of career outcomes one can hope for after finishing the course? All right, I hope I've addressed the second part of the question. So aerospace engineering at RMIT is very much focused on the aero half and not so much on the space half. So if you do aerospace engineering at RMIT, then you should most definitely talk to an aerospace engineer and they will give you the 100% correct answer. But the focus at RMIT is more on drones and aircraft design in aerospace engineering. And that was why we created the space science degree, so that we could offer the space part. And as a space scientist, you will be expected to do all of the kind of physics and maths that goes along with a science degree. And I got distracted by another chat, sorry. So the space science degree focuses on the science part, essentially. If you're more interested in engineering, then you should definitely go and listen to some of the engineering talks and make the decision which one you like best. But at the moment, the only degree where you can study space courses is the space science degree. Okay, what else do we have? Could you do your master's and PhD at RMIT? Absolutely. Yes, we have lots of space-related master's degrees and lots of space-related PhDs. All of the people who teach you on the undergraduate courses will also be able to offer you research degrees too. Okay. Similar question there. Oh no, Sulin already answered that. Okay. Let's see. How we're doing. I think that's how we're doing. Yes, as someone who hasn't done math methods, then we've got a number of alternate pathways. So there's the online courses offered by the Open University Australia, by Adelaide University and by University of Melbourne. They all do online remote learning maths courses that are considered equivalent to math methods. All right. If you don't achieve the requirements of the required ATAR or study scores for English or maths, is the bridging course for this undergraduate degree a smart option? And does it have any major requirements? Bridging course, if you're referring to the maths, then no, there'd be no prerequisites. That would assume no prior knowledge. So taking one of the bridging courses would be a great place to start, because not only will it give you the required maths knowledge, but it will get you into the habit of learning again and get you into the habit of studying again. Okay, I think we've answered all of your questions, and it's been great talking with you. It's been great having you here. Thank you very much for listening. And I think we're going to wrap up the session now.